Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to this public forum this evening. We don't have a huge number of people here tonight, but I know our forums are always informative. My name is Joseph Gleason. I am the chairperson of the Neshoba Regional High School Building Committee. I'm here this evening with our Superintendent Director, Mr. Kirk Downing, our Assistant Superintendent, Laura Friend, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our representative from Skanska USA, our OPM, to begin the show.
Good evening, everybody. So we're here tonight to talk about project schedule, explaining the reimbursement process in the grant program with the Mass School Building Authority, and also to give a design update on the site and building progress. So just for those who want to take a look here, look at the school administration and the volunteers that are from Bolton, Lancaster, and Stowe. We have a very engaged school building committee and school administration. So right now, we're in what you would call schematic design. We're getting ready to submit in June 2023. After that submission, we'll have a pretty good idea of where we are in terms of the schematic design estimate. Moving into the summer, we'll meet with the Mass School Building Authority, and we'll be going through the project scope and budget submission with them. Basically, it's coming to an agreement about what's eligible, what's ineligible, what the schedule is, what the scope of work is, and what their participation will be. So this is a higher level schedule. And what you'll see here is coming up in 2 weeks, we'll be sending schematic design documents to the estimators. You'll have Skanska and PM&C, who is an estimating company. They'll both perform independent cost estimates. After that exercise, we will distribute the estimates at the end of April, April 28th. And we will follow that with a cost estimate review and reconciliation. What a reconciliation is that we anticipate that we're going to have two different estimates because people look at things differently. But the reconciliation part is coming to an understanding about scope, about quantity, about costs, and having the two independent cost estimators and the design team and engineers reconcile that together to say, okay, we all are on the same page about what our understanding is for the design and the project. We'll then follow up with the working group participants who are volunteers here, who will then do their own review after we've done the sausage making, so to speak. And then we will be ready to present May 12th to the school committee, school building committee members, and then with a follow-up joint public meeting with the school building committee and school committee, and then later submission to the MSBA in June. So a lot of folks have had questions about what are we talking about here? Well, the Mass School Building Authority contributes to the project, but they don't fund the entire cost of a building and the building of a new high school. You'll see under 963 CMR is the school building grant program, and it really talks about what's required in terms of space summaries, square footage, programming, eligible and ineligible costs. But again, we want to be very clear that even though there is reimbursement, the MSBA does not pay for the cost or of a new high school here. So under 963 CMR, probably around about page 3940, you'll see in that document that they talk about what is categorically ineligible for reimbursement. So for example, any costs that have to do with financing the project or anything associated with legal fees or swimming pools, et cetera. You'll see that there's a very comprehensive list there about what's eligible and what's not. So in terms of reimbursement information here, one of the steps after we complete a reconciliation for the cost estimates is that we then establish a total project budget. The opportunity here is to apply the MSBA funding policies. They have a document they call the 3011, which breaks out the different categories of costs, whether it's the cost of the feasibility study, the cost for the OPM, moving into the next stage of the project, the cost of design, the cost of construction, any associated contingencies that are carried, the cost of furniture, technology, and contingencies. One of the things that you'll see here is that in applying these costs, that the building cost has a limitation for the Mass School Building Authority's participation. They will participate up to $393 per square foot, but that's not what the cost of a school is. And we're seeing now that currently in today's dollars, the average cost being carried is around $790 a square foot. And then depending on the project and how far you're adding escalation going out in time to the midpoint of construction, that number will vary from school to school. So you'll see the various caps here. Another cap that is offered is that the cost of site work. For some folks, the cost of site work might not be that much as compared to other schools. It's really site-specific about what needs to be done there. So here we're looking at, there's been some questions about, well, what is our reimbursement rate and what is the effective rate? So what we mean by base rate is the rate that the Mass School Building Authority offers to a school district. And then the effective rate is at the end of the project, what do you end up getting reimbursement for? And so you can see that in the lower left-hand corner, it says the average difference between base reimbursement rate and effective rate from all these schools that are highlighted here is 28.81%. So if we were to apply that principle to 53% reimbursement rate for Neshoba, we would then say, well, if this comes true, holds true as it does with other schools, the reimbursement rate would be pretty close to less than 29% of the reimbursement rate. But that's to be determined at the project scope and budget conference held with the Mass School Building Authority. So everything is speculation at this point in time. So if you look at applying the funding policies, we know that the MSBA will participate up to a cap of $39 per square foot on site work. And a typical site cost might be actually closer to about $78 a square foot. Now, if you look at the building cost, okay, the building cost per square foot is capped at $393 per square foot. And the average high school in today's dollars, based on information in the earlier slide, provided by the Mass School Building Authority, is $790 per square foot in today's dollars. So fixtures, furniture, equipment, and technology, the MSBA offers $2,400 per student, but we find that it's actually usually around $4,000 per student. So other miscellaneous smaller caps that create additional ineligibility is the cap on the designer and the OPM fee, the construction and owner's contingencies, and then any square footage in excess of the MSBA guidelines, for example, like for auditorium space or gymnasium or administrative space. Again, the application of these policies aren't about, gee, should we just eliminate these additional spaces? It was never intended that the Mass School Building Authority would fund the entire project. How is the base reimbursement rate calculated? You'll see that there is a very prescriptive process under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 70B. Section 10, the statutory formula starts all districts at a base rate of 31%. And then the base rate of 31%, there are adjustments made based on 3 socioeconomical factors: community income factor, community poverty wealth factor, and community poverty factor, sorry about that. So additional potential incentive points, 16 at max for any project. Might be for a newly formed regional school district. That wouldn't apply here because you are already a regional school district. High efficiency green school building program, up to 2 points. That is something we're pursuing. Best practices for routine and capital maintenance. There has been a number assigned to this project. We'll see in the next slide, I believe it's 1.53%. And then the last two do not apply to this project. So in looking at it, Neshoba's base reimbursement rate, you start with the 31%, you look at the income factor, 3.79%, the property wealth factor, 14.74%, and the poverty factor. And that gives you your base rate of 49.53%. The additional incentive points for maintenance and energy efficiency brings the total to 53.09% for eligible costs. So that means any costs that aren't eligible is 100% cost to the district, and that's why you have what they call your base rate and then your effective rate, kind of like your taxes a little bit. So utilizing data from the preferred schematic report based on the information available at that point in time, we thought that the tentative reimbursement effective rate would be somewhere around 26.59%. And then the effective reimbursement rate, as stated earlier, is to be determined at the project funding agreement, which is several months from now. So before we go forward, I'll suggest that perhaps we take questions at the end and we move through the design part of the presentation, and then we'll have Q&A.
Thanks, Marianne. My name is Joe Milani with Castle Booze. My usual cohort, Craig Olson, who is usually here, is out homesick. I'm sure we all wish him well. He's got 2 sick kids, too. We'll run through the first couple of slides really quickly. These are sort of slides that we've shown in the past, so they're just recapping what we've gone through previously. The goal of the project is to find the most fiscally responsible and educationally appropriate long-term solution for the district, and we go through this through several methods. We do try to support the educational plan that's been devised by the district for the new high school, and we try to follow and achieve all of the goals that were stated in the visioning sessions that were handled at the very beginning of the project. Collectively, we've had over 5,000 hours of, actually this was 5,000 hours at the end of Module 3. We're in Module 4 now, schematic design, which began in January. We said that in our January presentation for this group. As you remember, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 options that were brought before the committee for voting. Some of these were looked at in more depth. We did have a public outreach program that described all of these, and a polling that took place. The result of the polling, evaluation criteria. The MSBA has a series of criteria they look at for judging whether things are eligible for reimbursement or not. The district has priorities based on the educational plan and to provide the best educational system for the students. And the project team, the design team, has goals where we're trying to meet the desires of the visioning sessions and all those other things up there. In the polling that was done with the public, it was found that option 4D was the preferred option. You can see it's by quite a bit over the other 4 that were presented. That was also the selection of the district and the school building committee. Option 4D. Since we had that transition to the schematic design process in January, we've had a number of design meetings with the district, with staff and teachers from the school, with various town officials and boards. We had a meeting just the other night with Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have met with a lot of the people who are utilities for the project, in particular the Tennessee Gas Pipeline, which runs behind the building. We've done an analysis and test wells that were dug to determine the profile of the pipeline so that we could adequately design the height of the grade around the pipeline as we build a new building. I'm in contact with Tennessee Gas people probably twice a month just to be sure that there's no surprises that come up towards the end of the project when they're unaware of something that we're doing in the project. Everything that we do is based on their guidelines and with their permission. There will be some variances we'll have to get to cross that pipeline with some piping, one for the relocated septic line that runs up the side of the site on this side. And another one because the potable wells are going to be located on the northern part of the site, and to cross that pipeline with those potable wells requires a variance with them, but that's already in process. We have had discussions with geothermal consultants to verify that geothermal will be acceptable and utilitarian for this project. There are school building, actually we have also met with utilities for Mass Save to in and apply for reimbursements for the systems that will be put in the building, lighting, heat systems, stuff like that. The district has gone on several tours of other recently completed school projects, some before we got on the project to be informative and see what was going on in other projects. We've also gone on some projects and actually going next week to Weymouth, I believe. So the research continues on to find what the district feels will be the best learning environment for the students in the school. Next. As you may recall from our previous meetings, we showed this diagram then. You can see an underlay of the new building here, and the layout scheme that we've been using for this has been that the student commons is the central hub of the school. All the major spaces are located off of that central hub, with the small learning communities or the classroom spaces, you want to call them, sort of off on the side so they can be secured in the event of an emergency. Here you see the floor plan to date. This is the floor plan as of last week, which is a feat because this changes day to day. We work on this constantly, work on the site plan constantly. We're in contact with the district and other people constantly, and this morphs and develops and gets tweaked all the time. This may differ from what you might have seen in other presentations or what other committees may have had, and that's the reason is that, but this is the most current one. Again, you can see when you enter the building, this is the existing building here. That's one of the constraints that we have on the site. We're fitting this new building between this existing building. We're about 20 feet away at that point. The retaining wall for the football field, which is about 12 feet above the elevation of our building. The pipeline that runs along the back that we cannot impinge at all on that easement. The wetlands and the buffer for the wetlands on the west side, and the pump house station on the south side. So this building is being literally placed in here, but with the thought of making it the most educationally responsible building we can, having the adjacencies of different uses within appropriately placed, located where teachers in our interviews have asked them to be in relation to other spaces in the building. So again, you enter the building, there's a student commons here, which is the cafeteria. And this serves as a central hub, circulation hub for the entire school. All the major spaces are located off of this hub. The auditorium to the north, the kitchen and servery, the gymnasium, the administration, the nurse's office, and the library media center. Beyond this point, the stair going up to the second floor and going into the small learning communities, this gets locked off in the event of an emergency. The classrooms are separated from the public space so that in the event of having a public basketball game or something in the auditorium, that the school can be open, but the student spaces are secured. The small learning communities are basically classroom wings based on having breakout spaces that have the ability to encourage collaboration between different teaching groups. Each small learning community has an administration area and a teacher planning area so that these teachers can collaborate and have group projects within that space. There's a project-based learning space on both floors of the small learning community so that teachers in multiple classes can get together and have an activity, a collaborative teaching event, combining English and math or something else that would allow them to create more interesting learning environment. They find that project-based learning is really one of the better ways to present educational material. The small learning communities are 2 stories high, and the rest of the building basically is 1 story high. Although these spaces, obviously the gym and the auditorium are double height spaces. Again, a small learning community is a group of spaces where the students have all or most of the activities within that group. That's why it's called a community. It has classroom spaces, it has science lab spaces, it has special education spaces to integrate the special education within each learning community, teacher planning for the teachers within that learning community so that they can collaborate and present group projects, allied arts, which would be specialty programs like business or foods or something like that, and then breakout spaces in the common space between those where classroom walls can be opened, where teachers can come out and have group projects between 2 or 3 different classes at the same time and get the students engaged thoroughly in what they're doing. Here you can see a 3-dimensional image of a small learning community. The CR stands for classroom, obviously. Science labs have been put at the ends of each of the learning communities, so they open up onto this outdoor learning space on each end, both for science and as an extension of the learning commons or the project-based learning space. Each learning community is entered off of that central hub, as we said, where you come into a student display where students can present different projects they're working on. It can also be an identifier to give an identity to each one of the learning communities as a separate community. You can see that SPED is also integrated into each learning community, as well as small breakout spaces. And these small breakout spaces are accessed both from the classrooms and from the corridor to allow for teachers to have a small group learning go into that space to be able to have a project on their own, or to allow for conferences, testing, and things like that. That's integrated into all, so they don't have to walk outside the community to be able to meet. And we also connect vertically between the communities. This is to create a sense of camaraderie between the 2 communities, also to create maximum flexibility, so that depending on how the school is laid out with grade 9, 10, 11, 12, or an upper school or lower school, or in academies or something, that this allows for these 2 floors to be totally connected. We found in the past that flexibility promotes students from going from their community to others and having more experiences. Here you can see some of the influences that we looked at to get to these places. Vertical connection between communities. Here it's shown as what's called a held up stair or a sitting stair, but we don't have that between our communities. We have a regular stair. And that again is to create this connection between the communities. Project storage and utilizing all the space you can, space under stairs, space in nooks and crannies to maximize the efficiency of the building. And then small breakout spaces. This is showing breakout spaces off stairways and on top of sitting stairs. We have similar things going on in little nooks and crannies throughout the project-based spaces we have in each learning community. And then looking at the building itself and the exterior, looking at the different ways that we could integrate it within the community, characteristics of Bolton in this area, scenic ways, classical civic buildings, colonial buildings, and farmland, not taking these as direct references for the building, but using them as inspiration. We look at traditional forms utilized within modern buildings, utilizing gables, clapboard-looking cladding, materials like brick and stone, but then also modern materials like metal siding, sloped roofs, and wood veneer. Here again you can see typical classic historic building materials typically would require a lot of maintenance and not desired for a commercial building like a school, especially if it's 2 or 3 stories tall, and you replace those with longer lasting, more durable, materials that also give the feeling of higher learning and a high tech to the building. Inside the building, utilizing different characteristics, project-based learning areas. As I said, this is a classroom. You can see the sliding doors where this breaks out into a common space. Organizing the spaces around a commons type of space. This happens to be at a university, but still it's applicable to our building. Again, storage. Extended learning areas, corridors open up to become into the classrooms to allow learning to spread out. You can have small project-based learning spaces outside the classroom where 4 or 5 kids might get together to do a project. You can have little carols, you can have booths, you can have soft furniture. We just finished doing a similar project in Attleboro. We have those kind of breakout spaces in a 20-foot wide corridor, and it's constantly used. The site plan so far, and this is again hot off the press as of Friday of last week. The existing school is nestled, as I said, in this area like this. And we're building the new school on top of the parking lot that's over the wetland to the west. So the only field that's being utilized for the building is the new baseball field. So we're building a new one over here, but the existing multi-use athletic facility, the softball, and the sports fields in the back remaining in place. You can see that we have 2 axes for this building. When you enter off of the new rotary, which is going to be constructed, I believe, this summer, there's an axis this way, and that aligns this learning community and the main entrance. And then there's an axis orthogonal to the site, parallel to the really dominant restriction we have with the easement in the back and the rigid stadium wall to the east. Again, this is public forum number 6. We'll have another one on May 22nd to further discuss the budget after that has been worked through with the school building committee, going through our reconciliations and our value engineering and whatnot to get the project within budget. And school tours, do you want to speak to that, Kirk?
Yes, the school building tours, we're going to have our first round of tours this Saturday, April 10th. I will say we consolidated the 2 tours, so we've confirmed, Ms. Hannigan, 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock this Saturday at the high school. We will have our building tour. Our host will be Mr. Rob Friswick, who will take us around and show us all the various aspects of the building. And Attorney Gleason, our chair, has taken us tour and has advised many people to come to discover all the interesting things about this building that are limitations to the educational program today. The tour that was scheduled for April 29th has been canceled due to demand. And we're going to add a second tour in September. So we're going to plan some back-to-back weekends in September to offer people those tours prior to ultimately having a town meeting. So, okay, and with that, we'll be happy to take your questions.
Superintendent Downing, I have one question from the viewers, 18 people watching now. And Kaylin Dudley would like just a little more information about the green measures that we're working towards with the building project.
Well, the building is required to be green LEED certified to obtain the 2 additional points from the MSBA. However, we're striving to increase that, and the initial information we have from our lead consultant, who is the liaison with the U.S. Green Building Council, is indicating that we're going to be well above that, probably in the silver certification range. We are going through the process of designing the building with geothermal wells. That's in its initial stages. We've decided where those wells can be located, and our engineer has determined how many wells we would need. As Marianne said, all of that goes through the vetting process when we get to the reconciliation of the estimates further down the road. We are looking into also photovoltaics being used in the building. All of the building will be under the new building code that's coming out in, they keep saying next year, but I'm not so sure. But this building, by the time it's permitted, will be under the next building code, which is highly restrictive. Bolton is also has a higher level of energy requirements for their buildings as a stretch code community, and we'll be meeting all those requirements also. And the MSBA, as a baseline, requires us to exceed not a very good word, do better than the building code requires for energy conservation by 20%. So that's a baseline requirement. That's not even a question that you can or cannot do it. So there are a lot of sustainability activities that take place in the building. We have consultants that also meet with us to determine that.
I have one additional question online. Just a question from Rob Romer about timeline for presenting to the Bolton Planning Board.
Okay. I'm not sure what we'd be presenting to the Bolton Planning Board. We have already reached out to the planning director, and we met with the ZBA the other day as an informal meeting, just to present the project to them. And I'll be meeting with the building department this Friday to go through the building and the code issues in the building on Friday. But we've already had that reach out to the planning board to have that meeting.
Also, as a continuation, once there is an approved project, then the meetings will continue for formal approvals.
So we have answered our online questions. Any questions from our audience members this evening? I'll be happy to bring you the microphone.
Hello, I'm Kelly. I have an incoming kindergartner in the fall, so I'm brand new to the school system, but she'll hopefully be here when the time comes, which is kind of related to my question. The schools that have gone through this process in the last 5 to 10 years, are we seeing that their school remodels or new builds are keeping up with the times? I think where things are technology's changing, so much is changing. How long do we see this new build lasting us based on how that's happened in previous builds?
The Mass School Building Authority requires that whatever the solution is, that it be a 50-year solution. And so we have to build flexibility into the schools because technology is constantly changing. We don't know what we don't know right now, but we are designing to accommodate those upcoming changes. Also, in regards to other schools, it's really specific to the community about whether it should be a renovation or a new build, and the goal always being the most cost-effective, educationally appropriate solution. And sometimes renovation costs less, and sometimes renovation costs more. It all depends on what has to be done. And certainly with a renovation project, you're always looking at the deficiencies in the building as submitted in the statement of interest to the MSBA. So we understand that there are issues with energy efficiency and accessibility compliance and the fact that things just wear out over time. So it was determined that based on the several different options that we looked at and reviewed, that the option that made the most sense was option 4D, which was a new build.
Question from Nikki McGatchie. First a comment and then a question following. The open design ideas for the common areas are beautiful, but how will the architecture affect the overall noise level when there are a lot of kids in there?
We do take measures to mitigate sound transmission. We don't usually have any problem with open. It isn't actually an open classroom. All the schools that were built in the 70s had the open classroom layout have all been renovated or torn down. That obviously didn't work very well. This is really controlled classroom environments where it isn't just open, discussions with a lot of background din. These are project-based spaces, and most of the time, I will probably say most of the time, students are very respectful of that because they understand that that's their environment, and it could be them in a classroom and not in the open space. The open space becomes a special thing as part of the learning environment, and they don't take advantage of it, that I've found. One more question?
Any further questions from our audience in attendance here? Doing my best Merv Griffin here. Or Phil Donahue, right?
Hi, I'm Kristen. It was a little hard to tell from the pictures, but it looked like the classrooms that were off of the common spaces had a lot of glass. Are they like windows onto the open space?
Yeah, the classrooms actually have a variety of characteristics. Some of them will be able to be opened through operable partitions to the common space. Some of them will be open through the operable partitions between classrooms. We do understand the need to provide security, but we're not letting the need to provide security drive our understanding of what makes a good learning environment. We're trying to provide measures for security at the entrance to the classroom. I call them pods, but the small learning communities, rather than making the classrooms into four-walled, cloisters. So the glass forms two things. Firstly, it's passive surveillance, and students are better behaved when, someone isn't looking through the glass at them, but someone could be looking through the glass at them. So if you have a classroom with glass on the corridor, someone could be walking by and they could see him. But the other thing it does is it enlivens the educational environment, because students look in and they see stuff going on in the science lab. They see stuff going on in group spaces and stuff like that. And we find that having that interconnection a very enlightening thing for the classroom environment. There's a project that's on every vision systems presentation, High Tech High in California, where basically the walls are all glass in the corridors, and they all open up to the corridors, and there's never an issue with having noise, as was mentioned before, or having security be. I'm hoping security is the issue you were asking about particularly.
Security and just distraction.
No, we've done other ones, and people in our firm that have worked at other firms also have had glass in classrooms looking out at corridors, and we find that there's no distraction. It's a novelty at first. It's, oh, look who's going by, but, like I said, typically that's a passive surveillance type of thing, and people soon realize that, hey, anybody could be watching me, and so they sort of are on their best behavior all the time. It is not. It'll be a novelty in the beginning, but it doesn't last. Podium.
Tom Starr asks, what zoning variances are required?
We met with the planning director and the ZBA the other night. There is the only variance that we can see that we would require to get at the moment would be the height of the building. There's a requirement in the Bolton bylaw that the top of the roof of the building can't be any more than 32 feet high. It doesn't exclude mechanical units. It doesn't exclude pitches of roofs or anything like that. In a two-story building made for distribution of large ductwork for quiet systems, we're having about 14 feet floored floor. So our two-story buildings are 28 feet high, plus whatever we have for roof lines, and the mechanical equipment can be anywhere from 10 to 12 feet high. So there's almost no way that we'll be able to build a building of current mechanical systems and educational value without having it more than 32 feet high. The gymnasium by itself, to be able to meet MIA requirements for basketball and volleyball, has to be more than 32 feet high. The auditorium and the stage, in order to meet the requirements of the educational plan, has to have a stage area that's about 45 to 50 feet high. We are in discussion with the fire chiefs in the various towns to determine what their feelings are to be able to service these buildings above the 32-foot restriction. We'll be following up our discussion that we had with the ZBA last week to determine what we have to do going forward to either get variances or to work with them to work out how we get around the 32-foot height limit. It's just not something you can do in a modern school building. So, yeah. Not yet. We're trying to avoid a wetlands variance.
The question I asked if there was a.
Yeah, we have had discussions with representatives from the Conservation Commission. We've succeeded in moving the building where it was already previously in the wetlands, outside wetlands buffer, I should say, outside of the wetlands buffer, which is considered a resource area under the Bolton bylaws. We do have some impingement on the buffer for sidewalk, where it also falls into the area where the existing parking lot is in the existing wetlands right now. So we are having multiple discussions with various people.
Dr. Boynton?
David Alter comments that the MSBA funding reimbursement caps have clearly not kept up with inflation. They seem to be half the actual cost. Is the state currently looking at raising these caps?
The state just did raise the cap. It was previously, up until December, was at $363 per square foot. They raised it to $393 per square foot. They also raised their site cap from 8% to 10%. And they also raised their participation cap on the fees for the OPM and the designer. But to your point, you're absolutely correct that the MSBA cannot keep up with inflation. It would actually require them to double their receipts from the state. They get 1 penny of the Massachusetts sales tax. They would have to get at least 2 cents, and that money is allocated for other things.
Okay, if there's no other questions from our audience, and seeing none, I would like to now turn it over to our chair, Attorney Joe Gleason.
Before we close out the forum, I do want to just do my best to gild the lily here tonight. You heard from Superintendent Downing about the upcoming high school tours, and I've been banging the drum on those tours. If you have any interest in really seeing what this school looks like from an all-access point of view, please get in touch with the district through our social, so our social media platforms, and sign up for it. It's really a fascinating look behind the scenes. Mr. Frieswick will bring you to parts of this building that are rarely, if ever, seen by even some of the longest serving employees of the district. And I apologize for those members of the district staff that have seen this language time and time again in my emails, but I did take the tour in December, and it was absolutely fascinating. Who thought, just looking at the behind, it is, even Joe's noted them. The thing I wanted to gild the lily even further is to thank Mr. Milani, Ms. Williams, Mr. Olson for their time last week before the zoning board. That meeting, though informal, was recorded, and it was, if you're into zoning, it hour or so of, it was really interesting. The height issue, town like Bolton, it was an interesting take. So if you're interested in hearing what Mr. Milani had to say, and it was very good, by the way, Joe, it's excellent, by the way, excellent presentation, take a look at that. So Without further ado, we'll get out of here in less than an hour, and I will thank everybody for being here tonight. Please keep abreast of our monthly meetings. Our next one is April 6th. So without further ado, thank you very much for coming.